Everyone, this is update for December 24, 2024, day 1035 of the war and of the date update. Also catch up for December 23 and December 22. I'm going to do a general so-called strategic update, and then I'm going to switch to the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. So first, as you can see, I'm showing map of Africa. And the update there is that West was pushed out of Chad. So government of Chad asked, I think, French troops to leave, which they did. So most likely that this going to be that Chad is going to be essentially taken over by Russia and China. And so I circled for those who haven't seen prior videos, this is what Russia essentially controls, these three countries, and then also Central African Republic, and then they have significant influence in the East Libya. So this really means that, and also in addition, this is not just Russia. It appears they work together with China, basically China supplying military equipment to the governments of these countries. This seems to be coordinated work between the two countries. In addition, I want to mention a little bit about updates about Russian military bases in Latakia in Syria. It's still very unclear what's going to happen. It does seem that apparently there's still negotiations going on. Russia did try to move its bases to East Libya. But again, situation is unclear if they're going to be successful in managing basically to negotiate with East Libyan government, access to any of the military bases there. So again, still situation with Russian bases unclear. It does seem that chances of them keeping bases in Latakia are pretty slim. But anything is possible these days. Then I'm going to switch a little bit to macroeconomic update, and actually this is about Japan. So if you watch prior videos, I mentioned that differential between the rates in Japan and the US is decreasing, with the US central bank reducing rates. And there is another another factor that supports this decrease in differential that's probably going to get even smaller is Japanese member of Japanese central bank indicated to the media that they plan to increase interest rates in Japan to 1% by mid 2025. So this will squeeze that differential even further, which will accelerate. And there is also possibility that U.S. central bank will reduce interest rates by another 0.25% or maybe even more. We'll see. But the end result of all of this is there will be ever-increasing flight of Japanese capital from around the world, and most of that Japanese capital is actually in the US, invested mostly in the US treasuries. So this will, I would say, will not help US interest rates to be lower. And because Japan is very large investor in the US government debt, I think something around 1 trillion is invested by Japan. This will obviously I would say it's not going to push interest rates higher because there are other factors, right? So, but if let's say we remove all other factors, this would push interest rates higher in the US. But as I stated, there will be other factors at work that they're going to be at work, but this is one of the key factors that will be driving interest rates higher in the US. Now I'm going to switch a little bit to the situation Actually, in Russia, provide a little economic update on Russia, specifically Gazprom, which is Russian state monopoly that exports natural gas out of Russia. Um, so, for those who are new, haven't watched, like I've discussed this long time ago, probably like a year, or maybe even a year and a half ago. But Russia, this Gazprom is earning most of its profits in Europe. So that market effectively closed to Gazprom, and then they tried to switch to China, which ended up being not terribly successful because margins are extremely slim. China really wants low prices, and also they need to invest significant amount of money into infrastructure, specifically building pipelines. So it's becoming really a nightmare for Russia, and for that reason, Gazprom was had horrific results. But actually, there is a change. The export to Europe starts to go up. So it was 2024. I think it's going to be 50 billion cubic meters, which is, I think in 23 was less than 45. Don't recall number, but closer to 40. So this really gives much more sort of blood and brings life back into Gazprom. And also, Russian president indicated that they really want to renew export of natural gas to Europe. For reference, in sort of good times before the war, Russia used to export up to 200 billion cubic meters of natural gas to Europe. So right now, basically, they're selling 25% of what they otherwise can, which obviously will increase Russia's not only revenues, but the more part, it's very high margin product to sell for Russia to Europe. So it's almost like selling drugs to Europe, essentially, for Russia, from Russian perspective, obviously. And so that would really was one of the driver that Russia managed to gain very strong, significant political influence in Europe, various countries in Europe, more specifically Germany, but also a lot of Eastern Europe, even including Austria, in many places, is because essentially this really, the way it works, because this natural gas is being consumed by large industrial companies, and they have obviously a significant influence on political outcomes. And so there's kind of like a vicious cycle that really worked, because Russia would hook up these large industrial companies on Russian gas, and then they would support pro-Russian policies in those countries. That's how it worked, and this is largely broken in I would say in really bad way in Germany, because instead of switching those industries to, let's say, other sources of natural gas that's available, they being basically destroyed, which is again absolutely wrong approach, and that's why alternative for Deutschland is gaining popularity, because this non-constructive solution obviously creates blowback in Germany, which is obviously expected, and that really then will result in bringing Russian natural gas back, and it will be again the same control in Germany and in Eastern Europe, specifically Hungary, which is anyways controlled pretty much fully by Russian influence through obviously supply of through energy supply, both crude oil and natural gas. So again, this is how this misguided policy worked, and actually did not work, and created, I would argue, more problems eventually than solved anything. But the point is that Gazprom is doing better. They sold natural gas worth of roughly 45 billion US dollars in will cell in 2024, which is better than it was in 2023. And as you can see, that's a significant amount of foreign currency for Russia, obviously. The other news in Russia, sort of related to economy, but more sort of economic independence for Russia from the West, is Russia managed to actually engineer and build its own cell phone towers. They may not be as great and as efficient than Western build, but still it solves the problem. You can continue have wireless connection and wireless service throughout the country. So that was at this. I discussed this topic at the very beginning of the war. That is the weak point in sort of Russia, and one of the weak points, not the only one. But airplanes is another one, and Russia actually also moving towards solving that problem. They still have a lot of sort of hiccups with their passenger aircraft project, but it's moving along, and eventually those engineering problems will be solved, and it probably will fly as well. So basically, Russia solved one of the more challenging technical problems, specifically with cell phone towers. So, which again, that's communication. That's extremely important. One of the key sort of systems for regular economic life and also for military purposes. And so that's again shows resilience in underestimation of Russia's abilities and actually I would say abilities of the political system to actually create solutions, because there was impression that the Russian political system is completely inept, corrupt, but while it's largely true, it's still, I would say, capable of delivering results, and we can see that. Now I'm going to switch to the situation on battlefield in Ukraine, and I'm going to do a walkthrough in a clockwise fashion, starting from Kursk region of Russia. And things going there in the same direction, slow squeeze of Ukrainian troops out. I don't have any major updates of major victories, but it's sort of small crawl for Russian troops in the direction of squeezing Ukrainian troops. Now let's move to the situation north and northeast of Kharkiv. Things remain sort of stable here. No major movements by Russian forces. Now let's move to the situation on North Lugansk front line. Things here also more or less stable, with one exception is it does seem that Russian troops almost captured this village Terny. So it does seem that this will lead to loss of this sort of small bridgeheads on the eastern side of the stream, and the only control Ukrainian forces will keep is still in this forest. But again, Terny is probably going to be lost in short time. Now let's move to the North Donbass section of the front line. The northern sector remains more or less stable, and I would say that stability is due to the lack of resources on the Russian side. They simply don't have enough resources to make any active moves here. The southern part is actually had become a little bit more stable as well. So it seems like Ukrainian troops managed to hold on to that brick making factory. It seems that Russian forces just ran out of the resources to continue their attack. And apparently there's at least at this time, there's no reserves nor reinforcements to continue the push. So this sort of stopped. Situation generally not obviously positive for Ukraine, but at least simply Russia ran out of resources here for now. Whether it's long term or short term, medium term, it's totally unclear. Now let's move to the central Donbass front line. Things here are developing in a negative direction for Ukraine, but at much also slower pace. Again, there is sort of impression that there is less pressure from the Russian side. Unclear if they don't have enough reserves or what's the reason, but there's definitely reduced pressure from the Russian side, and that translates into very little territorial gains by Russian troops here. So this is updated situations straight like right south of Pokrovsk. So Pokrovsk is here. This Troyanda, Shakhtarsky, it's already part of Pokrovsk, and the main advance by Russian troops is really this villages Solone-Vovkove. And then they captured village Novoolenivka and advancing towards Novoyelizaveta. So this is really the only advances, and most actually of this Solone and Vovkova was already largely captured when I was discussing prior video. And this is how it looked on the 18th. So just want to show you the advances there. They're still there, but they just somewhat slowed down. Again, doesn't mean things are stable. It seems that Russian forces temporarily ran out of resources, and as soon as they get more reserves, the push will continue. So this is not due to Ukrainian forces managing to actually learning how to stop Russian advances. That does not happen. It's not happening at all. So as soon as there is more pressure from Russian side, the advances will continue. I just want to make it clear that this is not because somehow Ukrainian forces, and specifically Ukrainian command, learn how to actually play defensive game. This is situation near Velika Novosilka. Again, situation actually remains pretty much stable in this area. Again, going back to this, that apparently Russian command needs more reserves, or some regrouping is going on. It's unclear, but so far the pressure is definitely subsided. Now let's move to situation on the Zaporizhya front line. Things here are stable, nothing really major going on. And then let's finish with the situation along the Dnipro River, where last time I reported Russian troops attempted establishing bridgehead on the western side of Dnipro River. They failed. There were no repeat attempts of that, so it's unclear it was just one-off, or this is a failed attempt, and there will be sort of another attempt to obviously establish bridgehead on the western side of Dnipro River. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Bye-bye.